Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Okay, so this episode is actually the first part of the three-part finale. So, of course, the entire show has been building to the idea of the supernatural mystery that's kind of going to take place underneath Crystal Cove, where they're going to finally destroy the evil entity and all that. And this episode is the first of three to do that. And also, little trivia point: this is the first Scooby-Doo show to break 50 episodes. So yeah, that's kind of neat. Yeah, I should mention that. Scooby-Doo has had a history of where the series have just been of varying length. It wasn't until and for the longest time, the two longest were the Scooby-Doo show from the 70s and more recently What's New Scooby-Doo, which broke that record. And now What's New, and now we have Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, which standardized the whole thing into a 52 episode format, because every show after this kept the 52 episode format that's Mystery Incorporated set up. So yeah, figured I would just talk about that little piece of trivia, but in any case, this episode does kind of address finally does start building where now it's gotten to the point where they have to actually get ready to destroy the evil entity. So it starts off with Scooby-Doo with Mystery Incorporated alongside Mayor Nettles arriving at the Naval Air Base, and they arrive, and Fred points out that he hadn't been that close to a naval air base since he openly admits to Mayor Nettles that he's learned how to it's been established in this episode that it's been established in the series that this version of Fred knows how to fly a plane, but it's apparently to the extent where we would kind of get a little too close to the naval air base, and Mayor Nettles points out that he should probably never mention that to Homeland Security. At which point she tells the gang to trust that they can keep that new fancy spear safe and use it for what it's intended to do. With Scooby correcting her, pointing out that it's called a name, and it's called the Heart of the Jaguar. At which point they stop to watch the plane take off, and Shaggy actually winds up making a Fast and the Furious reference where he sees the plane take off, and he says that he has the need. And then he kind of goes into the need for, and then Scooby interrupts him by pointing out that the pizza, and of course they then proceed to list their favorite snacks, where they start pointing out that they're just really hungry, so they go to leave to go get a bite to eat. But of course, what we quickly find out is that when they get into Crystal Cove, it looks like an earthquake is hit, and namely nobody seems to be around, which of course strikes everybody as odd. They have no idea where everybody is, and of course Mayor Nettles is running in the Mystery Machine with them, and she's just as confused as everybody else, because she literally just left and came to get them. But it's at this point where Sheriff Stone proceeds to run out into the middle of the street in front of the Mystery Machine and hollering at them and telling them that everybody's gone. Which of course causes everybody to kind of freak out a little bit, and it's at this point where they go to meet in the Crystal Cove, to the Sheriff's Department, where Sheriff Stone then proceeds to clarify what he was talking about. He then proceeds to go on to explain how he was actually sitting there happily in the Sheriff's Department talking to his deputy about presumably law enforcement related things. When suddenly he looked away for like a second, and his coworker was just suddenly gone. And of course, this is what caused Sheriff Stone to start panicking, because then he realized that his deputy wasn't the only one, and he noticed that everybody else was gone. And of course, Mayor Nettles tells him to calm down, pointing out that he's freaking her out a little bit. But he points out he's just as freaked out, and he's freaking himself out. And he wish it would stop, and then he starts just banging on the walls with a chair to try and get it to stop. But of course it's at this point where the gang actually does try to figure out what exactly is going on. But as they're trying to work it out, suddenly a giant line appears in the ground, and suddenly Mayor Nettles and Sheriff Stone are swallowed up by whatever this thing is, and of course everybody starts panicking. But then Scooby just tells them to shush, and of course, everybody's kind of looks at him, wondering what he's talking, why he's asking him to be quiet. But of course, Fred does agree with Scooby, pointing out that whatever this thing is, it's clearly drawn to sounds and movement. So for that reason, he agrees with Scooby and tells them to shush. And sure enough, whatever this thing is, it digs a tunnel. It digs a kind of a tunnel around him, around the gang, and then leaves. And it's unclear what it is. At which point they try to reconfirm and make sure that everybody they know is actually safe and sound. But then Velma remembers that they actually left her mom at the Crystal Cove Spook Museum and the broken spine. So they immediately go to the broken spine in the Crystal Cove Spook Museum, and sure enough, it's completely and utterly destroyed. And they quickly realize that nobody else is around, which of course causes everybody to freak out, and they quickly realize that they need to make sure that nobody else got abducted either. So they start looking around, and of course they confirm that in fact they are the last people still in Crystal Cove, with Scooby confirming that they even abducted Nova from the hospital, which Daphne just points out is cruel, since obviously Nova's been in a coma this whole time. Only really appearing as like an Anunnaki type thing in Scooby's dreams. So yeah, for the most part, she's been in a coma, and there's no real reason to abduct her, but abduct her they did, which of course causes everybody to become confused. But of course, it's at this point where Velma decides to actually get them back to the topic at hand, pointing out that they still need to address the issue of the evil entity, and proposes that whatever is going on regarding Crystal Cove and whatever this mystery is. She points out that it's most likely connected to the evil entity in some way, and of course Shaggy kind of looks at her a little funny, pointing out that he didn't think that she actually believed in all this stuff. But she then proceeds to go on and explain that she kind of still doesn't. But she also proceeds to go on to explain how after talking with her mom, she had a bit of a reevaluation of what she thought science was. And of course, she then realized that a lot of the major scientific mysteries of the world have been kind of things that sounded ridiculous at first, but then people actually did them, and then you realize, oh, they're not as ridiculous after all. And she brings up specifically Jules Verne and how people laughed at him for submarines and the moon, which of course we've both done. But Scoob and Shaggy misinterpret that as they use submarines to get to the moon, which is funny. But of course, she proceeds to point out that they've been trying to reevaluate everything, that she's been trying to reevaluate everything, and so she reveals that she actually created a CGI image on her computer. She did a scan of the Planet disk and created a CGI image of it in her computer. And she reveals that when looking at her model of the Planet disk, she discovered that when it lined up, that it actually created a line of planets, and that's it. Shows the planets aligning, which implies that, which she theorizes is why things have gotten so crazy lately. She proceeds to go on to explain, with Daphne kind of picking up the slack a little bit sometimes. But she proceeds to go on to explain to the rest of the gang that she believes that the paranormal entity is the evil intelligence underneath Crystal Cove may be the explanation for why the town is so weird. And the reason it's gotten weird is because it's gotten closer to Nibiru. And now that the planets are aligning, it's now becoming a lot crazier, and that means the evil entity is close to breaking out, which she points out means that that most likely is why they were specifically chosen to pick up the slack and to take care of what their predecessors could not. She goes on to explain how the evil entity, how they need to actually also go over what exactly it is they know, and that the Planet Disk has actually been showing them things about what they need to actually go forward, and of course the gang then proceeds to point out that they've all got a series of weird things that they found, pointing out that they obviously found a conquistador's helmet, a sailcloth, a flintlock pistol, and a weird bowl, which they point out they still don't fully understand what they're supposed to do with them. But they do note that they seem to be important in some way, and they note that they're designated as keys. So they point out that obviously seems to be a thing. It's a thing of some sort of importance. At which point Daphne points out it feels like they know a lot of things, and also nothing at all, which Scooby and Shaggy point out is how they operate most times, and then start celebrating about the fact that they know nothing at all, which because the rest of the gang have also admit that they don't know much of anything either. But it's at this point where they actually wind up attracting whatever it is that's been burrowing around Crystal Cove, and Fred immediately tells them to hit the deck and stop moving, and eventually we do a giant hole then proceeds to rip its way into Fred's house, and everybody clings to a different surface to try and get away from it, and of course what we find out is that it's actually a giant drill manned by Scooby-Staffabots, which of course immediately start opening fire on the gang and trying to destroy them. And of course everybody cowers and tries to get away from it, except for Fred, who proceeds to tell the Scooby-Staffabots that they messed up and that now they're in his house. And he then proceeds to pull out the remote for all of his traps in the house, and then proceeds to turn them all on and immediately viciously destroys the Scooby-Staffabots with his traps and successfully defends his house. At which point they realize that most likely was what they've been seeing all over town. After realizing that the Scooby-Staffabots were Professor Pericles, remembering that Professor Pericles dragged the Scooby-Staffabots, they quickly realize that Professor Pericles must be behind all of the different disappearances around Crystal Cove, and they realize that the only thing they can do is figure out what Professor Pericles is planning. So with Fred's help, kind of reassuring the rest of the gang that they need to go and continue to solve the mystery, he then proceeds to lead them down into the tunnels, which are notably recently dug and also kind of a mismatch, and they quickly realize that they're not going to be able to find their way through, and Fred immediately suggests that they split up, but then Scooby hears something, or as he describes it, a lot of somethings, and when Daphne notices that Scooby seems to be hearing something, he suggests that they follow him, and sure enough, he then proceeds to lead them into a massive cavern where it's revealed that every single person that lived in Crystal Cove, as well as some of the prisoners, have been abducted and are currently mining something under Crystal Cove under the watchful eye of the Scooby-Staffabots, which of course they know is a little strange. But they also start poking around and start trying to get better angles from the tunnels. And of course they eventually find They eventually do find a tent that with Mr. E standing outside of it, and he proceeds to walk into the tent, and the rest of the gang quickly concludes that the rest of the original Mr. Incorporated must be in the tent, and Velma then proceeds to pull out her binoculars, revealing that she actually has a bit of a plan, pointing out that that Jason White apparently hooked her up with a special hearing mechanism on her binoculars, and she points out that they can actually hear the conversation from where they are. And at which point she proceeds to pull them up and homes in on homes the microphone in on the tent, and of course what we find out is that apparently Mr. E is still very much searching for Cassidy, even though he very much suspects that she's dead. And of course, Brad and Judy can walk up, but revealed to still be wearing their quote-unquote disguises, their plastic surgery disguises from Man in the Mirror. But they ask him what he's looking for. And of course, it's at this point where he points out that he's been looking for Cassidy, and points out that she's usually very resourceful and show up. And of course, Brad and Judy do agree to that, and point out that maybe that she should be fine. But of course, Mr. E points out that this is different in that she doesn't seem to be like she's coming back and seems like she's gone. At which point, Professor Pericles shows up riding on a Scooby-Staffabot, and he insists that of course Cassidy is gone. He then proceeds to go on to explain that everybody who gets in his way gets murked. So yeah. And the way he phrases that they get destroyed, which of course isn't much better. But it's at this point where Judy asks Professor Pericles why they haven't undone their plastic surgery yet, pointing out that he promised to return them back to their normal selves. But Professor Pericles points out that he frankly just doesn't have time for it. As he points out, now that he's got the piece of the planespheric disc, he's been pretty busy trying to get underneath Crystal Cove to actually find the cursed treasure. So for that reason, he hasn't undone their transformation yet. So, unfortunately, yeah, Brad Jr. is just kind of stuck like that. And apparently have been stuck like that for the rest of the series. But, yeah, so they're still wearing their fake Fred and old Daphne disguises, unfortunately, because they can't undo the plastic surgery without Professor Pericles to say so, and he won't undo it. So yeah, they're just kind of stuck with that. And of course, this causes Judy to become upset because obviously she's very old and very visibly upset about the fact that she looks a lot older than she is. And Brad tells her that she should be lucky. And then proceeds to tell her that at least she doesn't have to look at it, which doesn't really help her mood at all. And she then proceeds to snap at Brad, telling him that at least she doesn't have that awful chin. At which point Mr. E climbs out of the Enigma engine, and because that's where he was. And he proceeds to tell them that they need to stop fighting because, obviously, the closer they get to the cursed treasure, he points out, the more they're going to become unraveled. So he points out that they should really stop arguing amongst themselves. And of course, but it's at this point where where Professor Pericles points out that that tells them to all to shut up and tells them that they're so close and that they're finally going to be able to find the location of the planet where the planespheric disc is trying to lead them. And he then proceeds to place the planespheric disc on a pedestal, which he then shines a special light through. And the special light then proceeds to reveal a location on his digging chart, and he then proceeds to tell his Kriegsstaffelbots to focus on the digging on that spot that he's found, and also then proceeds to tell Mr. E that once they've done digging and they found the spot that he's trying to find, to have the Kriegsstaffelbots execute everyone, which of course Mr. E outright refuses to do, calling Professor Pericles a monster, and telling him that he doesn't want any part of this madness anymore. But it's at this point where Professor Pericles pulls out the button for his Cobra larvae thing, and then proceeds to paralyze him again. And eventually, Mr. E submits and agrees to Professor Pericles' demands, even going so far as to call him master, and tells him that regardless, he's going to make sure that none of Crystal Cove is going to get out alive. Which of course our Mystery Incorporated actually winds up hearing, and quickly realize that they now are on a bit of a time crunch to actually save the fellow Crystal Covians. Although they argue about which members of Crystal Cove would actually call their fellow Crystal Covians, and of course they argue about that a little bit, which and of course, eventually Velma breaks up the situation, pointing out that obviously that means regardless of what they plan, they need to actually come up with a plan very quickly, because the very obvious problem is there's only 5 of them and about several thousand Kriegsstaffelbots down there, and they quickly realize that they're very hopelessly outnumbered and they're never going to be able to do that. And of course, Shaggy does agree with that, pointing out that it is in fact one big battlefield down there. Which of course causes Fred to have a bit of an idea. And even though Shaggy openly admits he doesn't fully understand what he said, but of course Fred then proceeds to go on to explain that obviously they have a plan that he then proceeds to reveal that he sees a tunnel that leads from the Crystal Cove River and the Crystal Cove Canal, which he points out is big enough for him to drive the Mystery Machine through. And he also points out that they could very easily break in down there, and also makes sure that the Kriegsstaff, and also points out that they can easily get in there, and also start enough so if they send somebody in to start an uprising with the prisoners' help, they can easily take care of the remaining Kriegsstaffelbots and destroy them, and then stop Professor Pericles in his tracks. And also stop him from executing everyone. At which point he points out that the only hitch is that they need to find somebody who would be willing to go down there. At which point Shaggy bravely volunteers, confusing pretty much everyone, because Shaggy's not the brave guy. He's obviously Shaggy's the lovable coward in most situations, and of course Shaggy openly admits he doesn't even fully understand why he volunteered, but he points out that he doesn't really want to see any of his friends and loved ones getting hurt. So for that reason, he decided to volunteer. At which point he wonders what the weird tingly feeling he's feeling is, and Scooby tells him that it's courage, and Shaggy just responds that courage feels good, and he never had any idea. At which point, Scooby volunteers as well, pointing out that wherever Shaggy goes, he goes, and that they're going to go in together. And with that, they then, with their plan of attack, Fred then proceeds to bring them all back to his house, where he arms the Mystery Machine with a bunch of traps and weaponry and a whole bunch of other things that they can use to bust in and destroy some Creekstoppabots using the Mystery Machine, and just turns the Mystery Machine into an armored battering ram, and it makes the Mystery Machine into an armored vehicle. And meanwhile, they also use the Creekstoppabots they destroyed to turn Shaggy and Scooby into Creekstoppabots. They make Creekstoppabot disguises for Shaggy and Scooby and stick them inside of them, and that winds up enabling Shaggy and Scooby to easily infiltrate the ranks of the Creekstoppabots. And with that, they then proceed to get ready to go out and to go in. Shaggy and Scooby sneak in as Creekstoppabots and start telling everybody that there's an uprising and that they need to be prepared to rise up and help fight off their Creekstoppabot oppressors. While Fred, Daphne, and Velma drive up in the Mystery Machine, and they proceed to drive the Mystery Machine into the tunnel, while strangely another car seems to be following them. At which point, and of course, it's eventually at this point where everything is in place, but and of course they quickly realize that they're kind of out of time, because right at that exact moment, as Shaggy and Scooby are telling the last of the prisoners about the uprising, including Marinells and Sheriff Stone, who are very much one of the last people to get abducted, and of course they quickly admit that they're going to be the ones to lead the uprising. But in any case, it's at this point where Professor Pericles actually winds up discovering a strange door that is just dug into the ground, and of course Professor Pericles summons these Creekstoppabots to keep the riffraff away from it, including Shaggy and Scooby, which he doesn't realize aren't really Creekstoppabots at first, but he summons them, and he then points out that this is the thing he's been searching for a long time, and now points out that now he can get what he's always wanted: complete ultimate power, and. Of course, Shaggy then proceeds to call the rest of the gang on his little intercom thing hidden in his helmet, which telling the gang that they need to hurry up because everything is getting really crazy. But Professor Pericles notices that one of his Creekstoppabots is acting strangely, so he flies over to Shaggy and tries to get a better look at him. At which point Shaggy just tries to play it off as the fact that he's secretly a Creekstoppabot and makes a Lost in Space reference, which is funny. But and of course it's at this point where Professor Pericles summons his real Creekstoppabots and tell them to execute Shaggy. But it's at this point where the Mystery Machine actually winds up driving in and starts smashing up several Creekstoppabots like a battering ram. And of course it's at this point where they quickly realize that they need to figure out a way to actually destroy them. It's at this point where Sheriff Stone realizes that now they need to figure out a way to lead the uprising, and of course it's at this point where he realizes that he has to do it, and which Marinells tells him not to do that, pointing out that it's too dangerous. But of course Sheriff Stone points out that it's something he has to do, pointing out that he hasn't always been the best sheriff. He constantly arrests the wrong guy, and points out that it's time for him to make up for pretty much all of that. And then proceeds to tell Marinells that he loves her, gives her a kiss, and then proceeds to lead the Creekstoppabots in an uprising to destroy the Creekstoppabots, which does wind up helping Mr. Incorporated turn the tides against the Creekstoppabots. And of course, what ultimately winds up being a thing is that Fred winds up driving the Creekstoppabots through the thing, while Daphne winds up riding co-pilot, just using all the various traps that Fred installed to just destroy Creekstoppabots. And with the prisoners also attacking Creekstoppabots, Professor Pericles quickly goes into a panic and quickly realizes that he's not going to be able to fight back against them very easily. And in a bit of a panic, all he can really do is run away while Mystery Incorporated tries to attack him. And meanwhile, Shaggy is still very much surrounded by Creekstoppabots, but Scooby immediately comes to his aid, telling him that he's not going to let them hurt his Shaggy. At which point he also makes a Go-Go Gadget, Inspector Gadget reference by using spring shoes in his robot costume, which he then uses to immediately and completely destroy all the Kree-Cephalbots trying to destroy Shaggy. And eventually, Shaggy tells him to back down once he's gotten them all. And of course, eventually, Scooby tells him that he didn't draw first blood and that they did. Which is another reference that I don't know what that's a reference to, but I know it's a reference to something. But in case with that, the gang, everybody proceeds to pile up the pile of Kree-Cephalbots, and with most of the Kree-Cephalbots gone, Sheriff Stone then proceeds to point out that now it's time for them to go to freedom, and also tells them to somebody to grab Nova, since again, Professor Pericles just brought her down there for some reason. But unfortunately, the Mystery Machine winds up as they're about to make their escape, the Mystery Machine winds up getting surrounded by Kree-Cephalbots, who then start shooting up the thing. At which point, Fred says goodbye, beautiful, pulls out a remote and presses a button, which is revealed to be a self-destruct that completely destroys the Mystery Machine, seemingly with them in it. And of course, this causes Scooby and Shaggy to lament over the loss of their friends, but it does it does destroy the last of the Kree-Cephalbots. Although this moment of self-sacrifice doesn't last very long, because it's then revealed that actually Fred, Daphne, and Velma are completely fine, revealing that they actually modified Shaggy's mom's car to actually run a thing. They actually modified a device so that they can control the Mystery Machine remotely, and reveal that they were actually never in any real danger. Which of course Fred points out was the only way to keep Daphne safe, and also to a lesser extent Velma, and Velma is just kind of upset over the fact that he just doesn't think that much of her at all. But in case with that, Professor Pericles then proceeds to assemble the rest of Mystery Incorporated, while our Mystery Incorporated is currently distracted and he thinks they're dead. He then proceeds to walk up with his one last remaining Kree-Cephalbot, which has a robot, which actually does have the piece of Planet Spirit Disc in its hands, and he brings up the Planet Spirit Disc to the door, and he puts it in, and the door proceeds to open. And of course, it's at this point where Brad and Judy suggest that maybe that Mystery Incorporated might actually follow them in, and he does point out that that's actually the plan, that he needs them, but specifically he needs Scooby-Doo to be sacrificed at the right exact to be destroyed at the right exact time, so he can so that he can use him. And with that, he insists that they need to make haste, and they proceed to go inside the chamber where the door was. While our Mystery Incorporated grab all the 4 keys that they need to destroy the evil entity, as well as the heart of the Jaguar, and put it in a duffel bag, which Fred then puts over his shoulder, and then asks the gang if they're ready to go in and to finish this, and asking them if they're ready to see where this Uber mystery finally leads, and everybody says yes, with Scooby-Doo adding that Professor Pericles is going to regret the day he messed with Scooby-Dooby-Doo. So yeah. Again, this is where the series starts to pick up, because this is where the central mystery starts picking up. So now, we're in a position where Mystery Incorporated are going to go down, destroy the evil entity, and we're going to see how that goes. Yeah, there's still 2 episodes left, so I mean, we're getting in the end game, but yeah, this is the end game now. They're gonna have to race Professor Pericles to the evil entity and destroy it before he can use it to gain ultimate power, which of course seems to have been his plan all along. He openly admits that in this episode. He knew the whole time that the evil entity was down below Crystal Cove, and now he's finally going to go free it and gain its power. So yeah, that seems to have been his plan all along. He apparently he knew that the whole time that the evil entity was down there, would give him godlike power, and that's what he's been after the whole time. So yeah, that's interesting. But in any case, yeah, we're gonna see where this next thread leads, because obviously we still got more to go, and we still got 2 episodes left that are going to wrap everything off. So for the time being, gonna leave this episode here. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out. And you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks out of my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching. be sure to check out my Twitch as well. I stream over there, so be sure to go check those out. I'm trying to push for affiliates, so just follow me over there and watch the streams. That's all I really ask of you. Please go help support me with that. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this video. Whereas the bottom video is a video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to try something new or see more of what you like, then be sure to check both those videos out. And I don't really have anything else for you, I don't think. I guess Inside Job is the closest thing I got to a mystery type thing on the channel. But I do plan to watch more Scooby-Doo and do other things with Scooby-Doo in the future. So please, by all means, go and check that out. I would very much appreciate it if you did that. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!